Hey guys, tonight we're traveling back to the Middle Ages, where comfort was relative, hygiene was theoretical, and the job market was, let's say, unforgiving. Before we dive in, a fair warning: if you think your job is tough, you probably wouldn't survive 5 minutes in a medieval one. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is right now. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The night begins in the filthy streets. You're standing in the heart of a medieval town, somewhere in England, perhaps, though it could be anywhere that roofs sag under soot and lanterns sway in the wind. The cobblestones beneath your feet are slick with, well, you'd rather not know. There's a steady trickle down the alley, and you start to realize it isn't rainwater. The air is thick with a cocktail of smells: wet wool, horse sweat, smoke from a distant hearth, and something sour you can't quite name. This, you discover, is the medieval version of a downtown vibe. You move slowly, your boots making soft, sticky sounds. Rats dart along the walls. Somewhere, a drunk is singing to his ale, badly. The church bells toll, echoing off timbered walls and shuttered windows. You're not alone in this night. Someone else is working here. He appears out of the darkness like a figure from a very strange dream, a man with a spade, a wooden bucket, and a face resigned to the futility of soap. His job title, spoken with mild disgust by everyone else, is Gong Farmer. That's right. He farms gong, which, in case you were wondering, is a polite medieval word for human waste. His duty is to climb down into cesspits, shovel out what others leave behind, and cart it off under cover of night. You watch as he lowers himself into the pit behind a row of houses. The stench hits you like a physical force. You almost gag, but he doesn't even flinch. His expression is stoic, his rhythm methodical. You realize this isn't just a man, it's someone who's mastered the art of not breathing through his nose. The torchlight flickers across his face. He hums quietly, some tune lost to time, as though pretending he's working in a garden. In a way, he is just one with unconventional fertilizer. It's easy to joke, but the gong farmer's work was essential. Medieval cities depended on him. Without someone hauling away the waste, the whole place would drown in its own filth. People mocked them, yes, but they also knew better than to cross one. After all, when your enemy has access to the contents of every cesspit in town, revenge could get creative. There's a faint splash below, and he mutters something in a local dialect you can't quite catch. He emerges, sweat and grime gleaming under the torchlight, and hoists the bucket onto his shoulder. You realize this man earns more than many craftsmen. It's dangerous, dirty work, and that danger comes with hazard pay, at least by medieval standards. Still, it's not without risk. There were stories, grim ones, of farmers suffocating in the pits, overcome by the fumes. A bad night's work could literally take your breath away. Some historians suggest that workers would tie ropes around their waists, so others could pull them out if they stopped responding. You wonder who volunteered to test that safety plan. The gong farmer trudges past you, buckets sloshing, leaving a dark trail in the moonlight. You step carefully to the side, doing your best to avoid both the puddle and the smell. A cat watches him go, tail flicking, unimpressed. You notice how the night seems quieter after he leaves. The townsfolk are asleep behind their shutters, but the city itself feels awake, alive with the slow, hidden movements of people who work when others dream. You can almost hear the low hum of daily survival beneath the stillness. A soft breeze carries the distant scent of baking bread from the morning ovens starting early. It mingles, unfortunately, with everything else in the air, creating a sensory experience that feels complex. You take a shallow breath and remind yourself, medieval life wasn't dirty by choice. It was dirty by design. Waste had to go somewhere, and away, didn't exist yet. The torch gutters. You squint at the sky. The stars are faint, dimmed by the smoke rising from hearths and workshops. There's beauty in it, somehow, a reminder that even in the most unglamorous corners of history, life went on. Someone had to keep things clean enough for others to live. You step around a puddle that's probably not a puddle, and follow the winding street toward the edge of town. Somewhere ahead, the air smells a little fresher, touched by wind from the fields. You glance back once, and in that dim, flickering world, you can almost admire the gong farmer, alone, tireless, unseen, doing a job no one wanted, but everyone needed. It makes you think about modern work. Maybe your inbox isn't a cesspit, but some days it feels close. At least you can take a shower after. As the sound of his shovel fades behind you, the night stretches wider. You can hear frogs in the ditch, dogs barking in the distance, and the faint rush of a stream. You follow it, letting the cool air wash over you. And for a moment, between the smell of decay and the promise of dawn, you realize something strangely comforting. Even in the dirtiest corners of history, there was dignity. People found meaning in the work they had, even when that work was, well, shoveling other people's mistakes. You keep walking, boots squelching on the soft ground, the moonlight pale on your face. The town recedes behind you, and the road leads toward a hill where smoke curls gently in the night air. There's another kind of labor waiting there, hotter, heavier, and no less unpleasant. You take a deep breath, steeling yourself for the smell of the tanner's yard ahead. The road winds past crooked cottages and open ditches until the cobblestones give way to dirt. The air shifts from sour to sharp, from the musk of the city to something different. At first, you think it's just the countryside, but then your nose wrinkles, and you realize you've entered the tanner's district. The smell hits you before the sound does. It's the unmistakable perfume of decay, hides, rot, and the ammonia tang of old urine. There's no mistaking it. This is where leather is born, and it's a process that could make even the gong farmer reconsider his life choices. You follow the glow of firelight and see figures moving through the mist. Men with rolled sleeves and sun-browned skin bend over wooden bats. Their arms are slick to the elbow, and every motion sends up a faint splash and a stronger wave of stench. You might think surely they get used to it, but by the look on one man's face, no one ever really does. A tanner spots you from across the yard and gives a tired nod, the kind that says, if you're here, you might as well help. You nod back politely and immediately decide you're fine just watching. He turns back to his work, stirring the vat with a wooden pole. Inside it floats what used to be part of a cow, now in the awkward phase between animal and accessory. He lifts it out, wrings the hide like laundry, and hangs it to dry. The smoke from the drying fires curls upward, tinted orange by torchlight. You can almost taste the air. It's heavy, metallic, and faintly sour. In the distance, another worker hauls a bucket filled with something you wish you couldn't identify. Urine. It's an essential ingredient in softening hides. Sometimes, tanners even paid taverns for the right to collect it. There was no polite way to ask, so taverns placed jugs in corners for patrons to, well, contribute. The phrase, full of piss and vinegar. This is where the piss part earned its place in history. You find yourself thinking that somewhere in this world, there must have been a moment when the first person discovered this process, and you can't help wondering what they were trying to make before leather became the result. The workers move like a slow dance: soak, scrape, rinse, stretch. They scrape away hair with curved knives, revealing pale raw skin beneath. Each hide is pinned to a frame and left to dry in the open air. Dogs wander between the racks, hoping for scraps. For a moment, the rhythm of it all feels hypnotic. The sound of scraping, the rush of water, the low murmur of voices, it's a strange symphony of survival. You realize these men have done this every day for years. The smell clings to them, follows them everywhere, even into church, where parishioners are said to have sat far away from them out of necessity. Still, tanners were vital. Without them, there would be no saddles, no armor, no belts, no boots. Knights might have shone in metal, but underneath that glory was always leather, cut, cured, and shaped by hands that would never touch silk. Historians still wonder if tanners saw themselves as craftsmen, or just survivors of circumstance. Their trade was both respected and shunned, needed by all, welcomed by none. Towns often pushed their yards to the edge of rivers, both to keep the smell down and to let the runoff carry away what no one wanted to see. You kneel by the riverbank. The moonlight turns the water to silver, though you suspect the color is misleading. A faint bubbling tells you it's carrying something more than just reflections downstream. A toad croaks somewhere close, and for a moment, the world feels still again. The tanner wipes his hands on a rag that's long since given up being clean. Hard work. He mutters, not to you exactly, but to the air. His voice is rough from years of shouting over boiling vats. You can hear both pride and weariness in it. It's strange, standing here, surrounded by the stench of decay, you start to understand the quiet endurance that held medieval life together. Every piece of progress, every comfort, was built on someone else's unpleasant labor. You imagine your own soft leather shoes, your wallet, your belt, and realize that centuries later, the tanner's mark still follows you, invisible but constant. A wind stirs. The hides sway gently on their racks, whispering like strange flags in the dark. The flicker of firelight glows through the stretched skins, turning them into translucent sheets of amber. It's oddly beautiful, if you forget what they are. You glance toward the tanner's cottage. A small candle burns inside, where his family sleeps. He will rise again before dawn, as he always does, to start another day in the same rhythm. There's no quitting this trade. The smell alone ensures no one else will hire him. You find yourself wondering, what did hope smell like to him? Was it the faint sweetness of oak bark used in tanning, or the rare day when the wind blew the odor away from his face? He laughs suddenly, a low, rumbling sound, as a younger apprentice slips on the muddy path and lands in a puddle of half-processed sludge. The laughter breaks the spell, human and familiar. Even here, even in this reeking corner of the world, humor survives. You smile despite yourself. Maybe that's the secret of the Middle Ages, not just endurance, but the stubborn ability to laugh while ankle-deep in the worst of it. A bell tolls faintly in the distance, the sound rolling across the dark fields. The tanner straightens, stretching his sore back, and nods to the sound as if it's a signal. Almost morning, he says, mostly to himself. You take that as your cue to leave. The air seems to lighten as you walk away, though the smell lingers in your clothes, in your hair, even in your imagination. The night is thinning. The first gray line of dawn brushes the horizon. You turn down a smaller path, toward the part of town that sleeps uneasily. A quiet settles, heavy and tense. You notice figures moving with caution, carrying herbs, masks, and long wooden canes. The sight of them chills you more than the cold air. The beaked faces, the black cloaks. You realize you've entered a place where the worst job wasn't dirty. It was deadly. You've arrived at the plague doctor's street. The dawn never quite arrives here. The light is thin and gray, crawling reluctantly between shuttered windows as if afraid of what it might find. You walk carefully, your steps soft on the damp cobblestones, following the faint echo of boots and the rustle of cloth. Up ahead, a figure turns the corner, a long, black silhouette against the mist. For a moment, your mind plays tricks on you. The tall hat, the dark cloak, the beak-like mask glinting faintly in the half-light. It looks more bird than human. Then the figure stops, and you realize you've just come face to face with a plague doctor. The sight would have terrified a medieval villager. Honestly, it's unsettling even now. The doctor's beak mask, packed with herbs and spices, lavender, mint, perhaps rosemary, was meant to filter the miasma, The bad air, people believed carried disease. You catch a faint whiff of it as he passes, the fragrance oddly pleasant against the stench of the street. It's the Middle Ages version of a scented candle, if your candle also implied imminent doom. He pauses to check a bundle by the doorway. Inside, you glimpse a still shape under a blanket. The doctor doesn't flinch. He kneels, murmuring a prayer, and gently lays a small pouch of herbs on the doorstep before moving on. You can tell by his slow, careful movements that he's exhausted. Being a plague doctor wasn't technically a noble profession. It was a job few wanted, and fewer survived long enough to master. Towns would hire them on contract, sometimes offering free lodging and double pay. But even that didn't make it tempting. The position came with prestige, yes, but also isolation. People treated them with the same mix of fear and reverence reserved for executioners and saints. You follow him through the narrow streets, the mist curling around you both like smoke. His boots splash through puddles as he walks. Occasionally he stops, lifts his stick, and knocks on a door. No answer. He moves on. There's something strange about the quiet. It's too deep, too final. The city feels like it's holding its breath. Behind one window, a family huddles together. You see a flicker of movement, a candle flame trembling. The doctor doesn't knock this time. Instead, he places a chalk mark on the door, a simple symbol, but one that seals the house in silence. Historians still debate whether these doctors were effective or just symbolic. Their training varied wildly. Some were genuine physicians, others merely literate men who could hold a ledger and a ladle. Some may have saved lives through basic hygiene, boiling water, cleaning wounds, avoiding contact. Others probably did more harm than good. But that beak, that's what endures. You can't help wondering how it must have felt to wear it. The narrow breathing space, the scratch of straw beneath the mask, the constant smell of herbs and fear. The long robe, coated in wax, was meant to protect against contagion, but it also trapped heat and sweat. Imagine walking for hours, wrapped head to toe in black leather, in the middle of summer, surrounded by death. You'd probably wish the beak had come with a built-in fan. The doctor turns down a lane where the houses lean close together, their upper floors almost touching. The air here feels heavier. He stops beside a well and peers into it, as if checking whether the water itself has turned against them. The handle creaks when he turns it. You notice how still everything is. No barking dogs. No carts. Even the birds seem to have abandoned this part of town. Only the sound of the doctor's slow breathing through the mask, and the faint rattle of glass bottles in his satchel. Inside one of the bottles is vinegar, which he uses to rinse his hands between visits. There's another filled with crushed herbs, and a third with something darker that you decide not to identify. He pulls one out, tips it against his gloved hand, and rubs carefully, as if trying to convince himself that ritual can conquer reality. You wonder what drove him to take this job. Was it duty? Desperation? A calling? Did he believe he could help? Or was he simply trying to make sense of a world that didn't? A gust of wind stirs the mist, and for a moment, you can see him clearly. His mask gleams like bone, his eyes hidden behind glass circles that reflect the pale morning light. You think you catch the shape of his mouth beneath the mask, though maybe that's imagination. He seems to sigh. The sound is muffled, almost tender. Then, from a nearby doorway, comes a sound you weren't expecting, a laugh. Not cheerful, but not hysterical either. A woman's voice, rough with exhaustion. She steps out carrying a bucket, sees the doctor, and nods in grim acknowledgement. "Still breathing?" she says. He nods back. That's all. It's an exchange of survivors. You realize that in this strange time, laughter itself was a kind of rebellion. People told jokes about death because it was the only way to stay sane. Dance with death before it catches you, they'd say, and sometimes they literally did. The doctor continues on, vanishing slowly into the fog. You watch him go, that slow, steady walk that says he's done this 1,000 times and expects to do it 1,000 more. You know he won't. A soft rain begins to fall, washing the dust and ash from the roofs. You tilt your face up to it, grateful for the clean scent of rainwater, though you try not to think too hard about what it's mixing with. As the rain thickens, you find shelter beneath the awning of a small wooden building. A painted sign swings above the door, a pair of scissors, a comb, and, curiously, a bleeding bowl. You know the symbol before you even read it. Inside, another profession waits, one that mixed grooming with medicine, and haircuts with amputations. The barber surgeon is open for business. The rain follows you inside. It drips from your cloak, tapping softly on the wooden floor. The air here is warmer, thick with the smells of iron, soap, and something faintly metallic that you recognize too easily: blood. The barber surgeon's shop is small but tidy in its own chaotic way. Candles flicker against shelves lined with gleaming tools, razors, saws, forceps, and an alarming number of things shaped like hooks. The walls are decorated with drying herbs, maybe to sweeten the air, though they're fighting a losing battle. In the corner, a man sits in a chair, clutching the armrests with white knuckles while another stands behind him. Our barber surgeon, a man of confident grin and questionable credentials. He wears an apron that's seen better centuries, and in his hand glints a razor sharp enough to make you instinctively touch your own throat. "Just a trim?" he says cheerfully, and the man in the chair gives a nervous nod that probably wasn't about his hair. You soon learn that barber and surgeon were once the same thing. The medieval church forbade priests from spilling blood, so someone else had to do the cutting, and the barbers were already halfway there. They trimmed beards, pulled teeth, and lanced boils between shaves. Over time, they expanded their skill set: bloodletting, amputations, even minor surgeries. The customer in the chair grimaces as the barber makes a quick slice along his arm, letting the blood flow into a shallow bowl. Too much bad humor. The barber explains matter-of-factly, as though discussing soup ingredients. According to medieval medical theory, illness came from an imbalance of the body's four humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. The cure? Get rid of the excess. You watch the red streams slow to a drip, and the barber claps his patient on the shoulder. "There now," he says. "You'll feel lighter soon." You're not entirely convinced that's a good thing. Behind him, a young apprentice polishes a collection of scissors and knives. His expression suggests he's seen more than most grown men should. He glances at you, shrugs, and goes back to work. You can tell this isn't horror for him, it's routine. A woman enters carrying a child with a bandaged hand. The barber's face brightens. He motions them over, checks the wound, and starts talking as he unwraps it. The boy winces, but the barber hums softly, almost kindly, while applying a paste that smells of vinegar and honey. It's oddly gentle. You realize that for all his crude methods, he's doing his best with what he knows. There's a fact, tucked somewhere in your memory: barber surgeons were actually some of the busiest men in town. They treated soldiers, peasants, and even the occasional noble too impatient to wait for a university-trained physician. Their shops were marked by a sign of a red and white striped pole, the same symbol that survives today outside modern barber shops. The red represented blood, the white bandages, and the pole itself? That came from the stick patients grip to keep their veins visible during bloodletting. You can't unsee that now. The barber gestures for you to sit, offering to tidy up your hair. You politely decline, unsure of what you'd look like afterward, or if you'd still have both ears. He laughs, as if to say your loss, and wipes his razor with a cloth that is definitely not sterile. Historians still wonder just how skilled these men were. Some accounts describe miraculous recoveries, others disastrous outcomes. Surgery without anesthesia, antiseptic, or even clean instruments was always a gamble. And yet, somehow, many people survived. Perhaps luck was the strongest medicine of all. Outside, the rain has stopped, leaving a soft hush in its wake. The barber begins to tell you about the local fair, about the traveling surgeons who promise painless tooth pulling for a single coin. He laughs at the thought. Painless! Only if you faint first! And you can't help but chuckle. Humor, you realize, was the only anesthesia they had. A low moan interrupts him. In the back of the shop, behind a curtain, someone stirs. The barber frowns, wipes his hands, and steps through. You hesitate before following, but curiosity wins. The patient lying there is a soldier, pale and sweating. His leg is wrapped tightly, blood seeping through. The barber examines it with grim focus. We'll have to take it, he murmurs. The soldier doesn't respond. Maybe he already knows. You look away as the tools are laid out. The saw gleams, its teeth catching the candlelight. You hear the barber give calm instructions. Hold him tight. Then, mercifully, your attention shifts to the sound of the rain beginning again outside, drowning out what follows. When the barber returns to the front room, his face is drawn but steady. He'll live, he says quietly. Maybe. He wipes his hands and picks up a comb, as if to remind himself of simpler work. You notice his hands trembling slightly. He catches you watching and smiles faintly. You do what you must, he says. That's all any of us can do. You think of all the jobs you've seen tonight, the gong farmer, the tanner, the plague doctor, and realize they all share something strange and noble, the willingness to face what others can't. To do the unthinkable, because someone has to. The barber turns back to his chair, humming a tune that's halfway between a prayer and a distraction. You leave quietly, stepping into the damp morning air. The town feels softer now, calmer. The sun is rising, and its pale gold light touches the upper windows. The world smells of wet earth and smoke. You follow a narrow lane toward the monastery on the hill, drawn by the faint glow of candles through arched windows. Inside, another kind of labor awaits, not one of sweat or blood, but of patience, ink, and silence. You're about to meet the men who spent their lives writing in the dark. The monastery sits at the edge of the waking world, half veiled in mist, its stone walls damp with morning dew. The air here feels cleaner, cool, quiet, and thick with the scent of parchment, wax, and candle smoke. You pass through an open wooden door that creaks softly, and the sound seems far too loud in the hush. Inside, the light is golden and slow. Candles flicker along the long tables of the scriptorium, where rows of monks bend over open manuscripts. The only sounds are the scratch of quills, the soft rustle of turning pages, and the occasional sigh, gentle, resigned, almost melodic. You stand at the threshold for a moment, taking it in. The room is beautiful in its own severe way, shelves of bound books, bundles of parchment stacked neatly, jars of colored pigments lined up like precious stones. Yet there's something heavy in the air too. The stillness isn't peace, it's fatigue stretched thin over devotion. A young monk looks up from his desk, eyes rimmed red from long hours of staring at ink and vellum. He nods once in greeting, then returns to his task. You watch his hand glide steadily across the page, copying a line of Latin so precise it looks printed. He dips his quill, blows softly to dry the ink, and continues. This is the world of the medieval scribe, a place where time dissolves into repetition. Their job was to preserve knowledge by hand, letter by letter in silence. It was sacred work, but not glamorous. Long hours, stiff backs, dim light, and the constant risk of ruining a week's labor with a single blot of ink. You move closer, the floor creaking softly beneath your boots. The monk beside him mutters under his breath, perhaps a prayer, perhaps a complaint. His quill squeaks as he writes. You glance at his page and notice a small doodle in the margin, a cat chasing a mouse. He catches your eye and grins, quick and guilty. You realize boredom may be the most universal human experience of all. Some scribes left their frustrations behind in the manuscripts themselves. There are real notes in medieval books that read, "Oh, my hand is tired," or "Let the end come soon." One even scrawled, "As the harbor is welcome to the sailor, so is the last line to the scribe." You can almost feel the ache in their fingers centuries later. A bell tolls softly outside. Prime, the early morning prayer. None of the monks move yet. They have to finish their lines before they rise. The discipline is absolute. The head scribe, an older man with a stooped back and ink stains up to his wrists, shuffles past you. He peers over shoulders, checking every curve and dot. His expression is unreadable, part teacher, part ghost. You sense that he's spent so many years here that the rhythm of quill on parchment is more natural to him than speech. The air feels thick with focus. The smell of ink is sharp, almost sweet. You imagine spending your whole life in this silence, days marked only by the ringing of bells and the scratching of pen against skin. You start to understand how this could drive a mind both to brilliance and to madness. Historians still wonder about the psychology of these men, how they endured such solitude, how they balanced devotion with drudgery. For many, writing was a form of prayer. Each letter a repetition, each word a meditation. And yet, some notes suggest frustration too human to ignore. "The ink is thin," one wrote. "The weather is cold." Another added simply, "Right, right, always right." A gust of wind sneaks through a crack in the wall, and one of the candles sputters. A scribe immediately shields his page, whispering a curse that probably isn't found in any holy text. You smile, careful not to let him notice. There's a soft rustling as a new page is turned. The texture of parchment whispers under fingertips. You reach out and touch one of the finished manuscripts, carefully, reverently. The ink gleams faintly. The words feel alive. One of the monks catches you reading and leans closer. His voice is soft, steady, almost monotone from disuse. "We copy so the world remembers," he says. "But sometimes I wonder if the world will remember us." You want to tell him yes, that people centuries later will read these pages, will marvel at the beauty of his script, will study the tiny drawings hidden in the margins. But before you can speak, he smiles faintly, as if he already knows. He sets down his quill, flexes his stiff fingers, and whispers a prayer of thanks for reaching the end of the line. Then he picks up the next sheet. The candlelight glows warm on his face, and you realize the scriptorium is less a place of work and more a living organism, breathing through pages, pulsing with the rhythm of thought. Every drop of ink here is a heartbeat. Still, you feel the exhaustion creeping through the air. The day outside grows brighter, but inside, time has no meaning. You can sense how some monks lose themselves in the repetition, how silence stretches too long, how ink-stained dreams begin to blur with reality. You can almost hear the question echoing through centuries of scribes: does God read faster than we write? You take a slow breath. The scent of parchment and candle wax fills your lungs, oddly comforting despite its dryness. You imagine your own hand cramping around the quill, the ink smudging as you fight to stay awake. Then, softly, the bell rings again. The monks rise in unison, robes rustling like leaves. They move toward the chapel for prayer, leaving the scriptorium silent but for the faint creak of chairs and the lingering scent of labor. You step outside with them. The sunlight hits your eyes, blinding after so long in the gloom. The world is alive again, the hum of insects, the lowing of cattle, the distant shouts of townsfolk. You blink against it all, realizing how much you've missed fresh air. Down the hill, the town is stirring. Carts creak, dogs bark, people call to one another. But in the alleys, behind the walls, another class of workers begins their day, men and women whose jobs are stranger, smaller, but no less essential. You start down the path toward the noise and motion of life once more. Somewhere between the fields and the market, there's a man wading knee-deep in a swamp, searching for something slippery and alive. Your next stop, the forgotten trades, the leech collectors, the rat catchers, and the sin-eaters who made a living off the guilt of others. The smell reaches you before the sound does, mud and stagnant water, a sour sweetness that clings to the air. You follow a narrow dirt path between cattails and reeds, boots squelching in the muck. The morning fog hangs low over the marsh, wrapping the world in pale gray silence. Somewhere ahead, you hear the faint slap of water and a muttered curse. You push aside a tangle of wet reeds and see her, a woman standing thigh-deep in the swamp, skirts hitched to her knees, a wooden bucket in one hand. Her arms are streaked with mud, her face weathered and calm. Every so often she plunges a hand beneath the water, then pulls it back with a triumphant grunt, a wriggling black leech twisting in her grasp. She drops it into the bucket, where dozens of others writhe and squirm, their bodies gleaming like wet glass. This is the life of a leech collector, one of the stranger, riskier professions of the medieval age. The best leeches grow in the deepest, murkiest water, and catching them is half patience, half pain. Some collectors use livestock to draw them out, others use themselves. The woman gestures toward you with a weary smile. You want them fat and quick to bite? Best ways to let them drink a little first. She rolls up her sleeve and dips her bare arm beneath the surface. Within seconds, the leeches find her, tiny dark ribbons attaching themselves in clusters. She waits a moment, grimaces, then flicks them off into the bucket. Each one worth a few coins at the apothecary or the barber's shop, where bloodletting is still medicine. You ask if it hurts. Not much, she says, wiping her arm. The bite's the easy part. It's the itch after that drives you mad. She laughs softly, a dry sound swallowed by the fog, and goes back to work. You watch her for a while, realizing that every jar of curative leeches in a medieval surgeon's cabinet came from someone like her, standing alone in a swamp before dawn. A sudden splash behind you makes you turn. A man is trudging through the shallows with a burlap sack, muttering about rats. His clothes are torn, his boots chewed at the edges. Around his belt dangle small metal traps, each baited with crumbs. He tips his sack, and 3 dead rats tumble out, their tails tied together. He nods at you and grins with the weary pride of a craftsman. You'd think people would thank a man for keeping the plague away, he says, but mostly they just scream when I show up. You follow him back toward the edge of the village. His trade is simple but vital: rat catcher, defender of grain, walls, and sleep. He works with traps, dogs, or even tame ferrets that chase vermin through narrow spaces. Sometimes, he carries a cage of live rats through the marketplace to prove his skill, a display equal parts advertisement and horror show. Not bad work, he says, if you don't mind the smell, or the fleas, or the customers who swear you brought the rats yourself. He laughs, a rasping sound, and kicks a loose stone down the road. You notice his hands are covered in small scars, and there's a twitch to his shoulders, as if he's constantly ready for something to scurry near his feet. At the next crossroads, the rat catcher stops to talk to a man in a dark cloak standing beside a small wooden cart. The cart holds bread, salt, and a single cup of ale. But the man's eyes are fixed on something else, on the still figure lying on a plank of wood beside him. The dead man's family watches in silence as the cloaked figure begins his ritual. He takes the bread, places it on the corpse's chest, whispers a prayer no one quite understands, then eats the bread in small, deliberate bites. The rat catcher crosses himself. That one, he mutters, is a sin-eater. It's one of the rarest and most unsettling professions, a remnant of old superstition. When someone dies burdened by sin and no priest is available, a sin-eater is paid to consume their guilt. The act is both sacred and shunned. No one wants to speak to him afterward. No one invites him to dine. When the ritual is done, the sin-eater wipes his hands on his cloak, nods once to the family, and turns away without a word. He catches your gaze for a moment, and there's something hollow in his eyes, like a man who's eaten too many ghosts. He passes by you, moving silently down the road. The villagers watch him go, their relief palpable. To them, he's both blessed and cursed, necessary, but better unseen. You stand for a while, watching the marsh wind ripple across the fields. The leech collector is still a dark shape in the mist, the rat catcher trudges away toward another alley, and the sin-eater disappears into the distance. 3 lives that thread the forgotten corners of the medieval world. Not nobles, not knights, not heroes. But without them, the rest of society would collapse into filth, disease, and fear. A church bell tolls faintly in the distance. The sun is sinking, painting the marsh water gold. The world grows quiet, except for the soft hum of flies and the whisper of reeds brushing against each other like voices too tired to finish their thought. You start walking again, back toward the town. The smell of smoke and food drifts through the cooling air. Somewhere behind you, the last light of day fades into the fog. By the time you reach the gate, torches are being lit, their flames flickering against the damp stone. The market stalls close, the beggars settle in doorways, and the air fills with the low, weary sigh of a day ending. Tomorrow, the gong farmers will rise again, the tanners will stir their vats, the scribes will dip their quills. The world turns on work both noble and grotesque. But for now, as the first stars prick the sky, you let the noise of the town fall away and walk toward the quiet glow of an inn. A fire burns within. The night outside grows cold and still. Soon, the only sound left is the crackle of wood, and the soft murmur of those who have survived another day. You close your eyes, listening to the faint chorus of labor still echoing beyond the walls, the shovels, the quills, the scraping knives, the prayers whispered to no one in particular. And as sleep begins to gather around you, you think, perhaps the medieval world wasn't made of kings and knights at all, but of these, the forgotten hands that kept the dark from swallowing everything. The fire in the inn has burned low by now, its last embers sighing into red dust. You drift back outside into the cool night air, where the town seems to hold its breath. The wind has calmed, and the streets, those narrow, twisting veins of medieval life, are nearly empty. A few windows still glow with candlelight. Somewhere, a dog barks once, then thinks better of it. You walk slowly through the sleeping town. The stones underfoot are slick from earlier rain, shining faintly under the moon. Above you, the timbered houses lean toward each other as if sharing secrets, their roofs crooked and damp, their gutters whispering with the last of the drizzle. It's quieter now than you've ever known it. You can still smell traces of the day, ashes from a blacksmith's forge, yeast from the baker's hearth, and the faint tang of tan leather drifting from the edge of the square. Life lingers in scent long after sound has gone. A flicker catches your eye, a candle burning behind a stained glass window in the small church at the town's center. You step closer, pushing open the wooden door with a soft creak. Inside, the air is thick with the smell of wax and old wood. Rows of benches stretch toward the altar, where a lone priest dozes upright in his chair. His snoring mixes with the faint crackle of the candle beside him. You sit quietly, watching the flame. It dances in tiny circles, throwing shadows of saints across the wall, flickering faces that seem to breathe in the warm air. For a brief moment, they look almost alive, the painted eyes filled with something between sorrow and patience. You wonder how many centuries of tired hands have lit candles in this same room, whispering the same fears and thanks. Historians still wonder if the average medieval person believed they had much control over their fate, or if faith was their only steady light. Maybe the answer was simple. When life could turn cruel by sunrise, you learned to treasure whatever small flame kept the dark away. You leave the church quietly, careful not to wake the priest. Outside, the moon has climbed higher, pale and watchful. The street below glimmers like liquid silver. You follow it past shuttered taverns and sleeping horses, past barrels that smell faintly of ale, until you reach the city gate. The guards are gone, their stools empty. Beyond the walls, the open fields stretch into darkness. Crickets sing somewhere near the hedges. You stand there for a while, breathing in the cold. It's easy to imagine the people you met today fading back into their lives. The gong farmer rising before dawn, shovel in hand. The tanner tending his stinking vats. The plague doctor walking streets that no one else dares to cross. They are not the heroes of ballads or the subjects of painted tapestries. Yet without them, the world wouldn't have functioned for a single day. A warm breeze stirs the grass outside the gate. You close your eyes and picture the medieval world at rest. The castle kitchen's gone quiet, pots cooling beside the hearth. The tanner's yard steaming faintly under the moon. The rats creeping through alleys, unaware of traps reset for morning. The monks asleep in their cloisters, their half-finished words drying on parchment. It's strange how much effort went into simply surviving. How many hands it took to keep the lamps burning, the bread baked, the bodies clean and buried. And now, in the hush of night, all of that toil seems to fade into something softer. The dirt and noise of the day are washed away by darkness. The whole town breathes as one, dreaming of better mornings. A soft rain begins to fall again, gentle, hesitant. You tilt your head back, letting it brush against your face. The drops taste faintly of smoke and iron. Maybe this is what history really is, not the kings or battles, but the quiet between storms. The moments when people simply endure. You start walking back through the gate, toward the faint glow of the inn's window. Your steps sound like whispers on the wet stone. Somewhere above, a cat moves across a roof tile, graceful and unbothered. Inside, the innkeeper snores behind the counter. The hearth gives off its final bit of warmth. You sit by it one last time, stretching your hands toward the glow. It's not bright, not enough to read by, but enough to see your reflection in the window. Tired, maybe, but still alive. Still here. The medieval world turns slowly beyond the walls, but for now, you let it. You've walked its streets, met its workers, smelled its air, and felt its exhaustion. You've learned that history isn't only glory, it's grit. And tonight, at least, that feels enough. The fire hums. The rain murmurs against the roof. The candle beside you trembles, bends, and finally goes out. Darkness folds gently over everything. You stay there a while, letting the silence settle. The world outside drifts farther and farther away, its noise, its light, its endless movement. All that's left is the soft rhythm of your breathing. Imagine the warmth of the fire still glowing in your chest, steady and calm. The air around you cools slightly, brushing against your skin like a slow tide. Every muscle in your body begins to loosen, one by one, your shoulders sinking, your jaw unclenching, your hands resting easily on your lap. Breathe in through your nose. The faint scent of rain, of wood smoke, of old earth. Breathe out through your mouth. The long exhale carries away the day's heaviness. You picture yourself walking once more through the empty streets, each step slower, lighter. The stones underfoot are smooth and warm. Lanterns sway gently in the wind, painting gold arcs through the mist. Above, the clouds drift apart, and the stars appear, quiet, constant, older than every story you've ever heard. The same stars that watched over those who came before you. The same stars that will still be shining when your dreams begin to deepen. You pause, close your eyes, and let the last sound fade, the sigh of the night itself, soft as a blanket being drawn over the world. And as you finally drift towards sleep, remember, even the hardest days in history ended in quiet like this. Every worker, every wanderer, every soul found rest eventually.